What's going on, guys? Welcome back into the channel. Today we're going to be talking about what each rating slash attribute means for players in MLB The Show. We're specifically on MLB The Show 21 today, and we're going to be talking about pitchers. Now, what I want to clarify here for you before we actually jump into the video is that they have all the ratings for players listed as attributes. Whenever you actually go to edit a player, you click on attributes. That's how you get to all of their specific ratings. So I'm going to use probably the term attributes, ratings, and probably a couple of other things interchangeably in today's video. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So as we start off today's video, hopefully the audio quality is pretty solid. I went ahead and purchased a new microphone to get a little bit of a better control over what's going on with the actual audio with my videos here on the channel. Hopefully it's good, but I'm going to be working through it. Let's go ahead and jump into it, and let's talk about what each of these attributes slash ratings actually means. What do they do in MLB The Show? Specifically, like I said, we're on MLB The Show 21 today, but let's go ahead and talk about it. Now, the first thing to talk about is stamina, and this one is pretty straightforward. A pitcher's stamina is going to determine how long they can go within a game, how many innings they can go. You know, generally starting pitchers will have stamina within the 70s, 80s, and better, depending on whether they are, you know, a player that can go that long or not. And if you take a look at, for example, maybe, you know, closing pitchers, you guys can see up there that a lot of these guys have, you know, closer to 20s and 30s, because these guys are players that are meant to come in for 1 inning, 2 innings, or something like that. So your stamina is strictly just going to depend on how quickly that player gets tired and has to be taken out of the game. Pitching clutch is a very interesting rating, and to be honest with you, a lot of these ratings, we don't have an exact idea of how they formulate into what goes on within the game, but pitching clutch is essentially going to determine how well a player does within certain situations. So with runners on base, with runners in scoring position, or let's say you bring in a pitcher to close out a game in the bottom of the 9th inning or something like that, those are going to be considered clutch situations, and the higher the player's pitching clutch, the better they will perform in those situations, giving up less hits, giving up less runs, giving up less home runs. Those players with higher pitching clutch are generally speaking going to perform better in those situations. So, you know, players like Reyes Maranta here have 80 pitching clutch. You know, closing pitchers across the league, some of the better ones you're going to see have very good pitching clutch, and that's going to be one of the things that really factors into how well these players actually do whenever they get on the mound for that final inning to close out a game and stuff like that. Generally speaking, you're not going to see that same type of thing out of your starting pitchers. You know, they will from time to time, depending on who they have pretty good pitching clutch, but it is not like a key attribute for them. And then we can talk about H per 9, HR per 9, K per 9, and BB per 9. So what each of these stands for is hits per 9, home runs per 9, strikeouts per 9, and base on balls per 9. So once you understand what those actually stand for, they kind of start to spell themselves out in terms of what they actually mean. So hits per 9 is going to be directly linked to how often this player gets hit. You know, so if a player has a high hits per 9 number, they're less often going to allow actual solid contact on the ball. More often than not, players going up against a pitcher with a high hits per 9 are going to, you know, either hit it to a defender or foul the ball off if they make contact with it or pop up. You know, you will notice within the game whenever you're playing and batting against higher level pitchers that they tend to allow less hits, they tend to allow less contact on the ball, and that's going to very often be keenly attributed to their hits per 9 number. Home runs per 9 is pretty straightforward as well. This is their number that is going to determine how easy it is to get a solo shot home run or any type of home run off of this pitcher. A pitcher with a high home runs per 9 will very often prevent players from hitting home runs against them, even if they have really good power and get good contact on that ball. A player could hit a ball square and hit it really well, and if that pitcher has really good home runs per 9, that's going to factor into the formula as to whether that ball actually goes out of the park or not. So if you're ever batting and you get those opportunities where you think you hit a ball really well and it should be a home run, maybe your guy has enough power to hit a home run and it doesn't go out of the park, it flies out to the warning track, well, a lot of the times what's going on there is the pitcher you're going up against has a very good home runs per 9 number, preventing you from hitting it out of the park. Next is the Ks per nine, or strikeouts per nine, strikes per nine, whatever you want to call it. So this is the stat that is going to be linked with how well this pitcher is going to do in terms of striking batters out. And essentially what this rating does in terms of factoring into the equations that are going on behind the scenes within the game is this determines whether opposing players are going to be more likely to swing and miss at the ball. It depends on whether they're going to maybe view a pitch incorrectly, and if it's within the zone and they don't swing on it and you strike them out, players with a higher K per nine number are going to find it easier to strike guys out. So a great example of this is Tyler Rogers here, who as a pitcher is very much a contact type of pitcher. He tries to induce ground balls and things of that nature. He's a submarine pitcher, so he finds it very hard to actually strike players out. So you guys can see his Ks per nine number is really low. That means that he's not going to be the type of player to get strikeouts on other hitters, but what is going to happen is he's not really going to let up home runs. He's not really going to allow hits or anything like that. This is a guy that just simply doesn't get strikeouts. What happens is he throws the ball to hitters, and they very often make like kind of crappy contact on the ball, and it goes to a defender for an easy out or something of that nature. That's that type of pitcher. We can go on and we can talk about base on balls per nine, and essentially this is very close to a pitcher's control number, and so this is going to factor into how well a pitcher is able to essentially pitch within the zone and prevent walks and things of that nature. If you have a high BB per nine, essentially what's going to happen is you're going to, generally speaking, pitch more accurately. If you have a low BB per nine, you're going to have more often than not these times wherever you're up on the mound and you think you got an accurate pitch and it just goes wild in comparison to where it went. You're going to walk more batters with a low base on balls per nine number, and that's just exactly what it is. And whenever we talk about pitching attributes, we also have to talk about velocity, control, and break. Now, these things are interesting. So each one of the pitches that you have is going to have a velocity, control, and break number. And so these all three work the same way, velocity, control, and break. What's going to happen is in order to derive a pitcher's actual velocity number, actual control number, or actual break number on their player card, it's going to combine all of their velocities from their pitches, all their controls, all their breaks. So we would combine the 13 velocity from the fastball, the 0 velocity from the curveball, the 18 velocity from the sinker, and it applies it to some type of formula, and essentially what ends up happening is you come out to a player's actual, rating in terms of their velocity. And you can see that Tyler Rogers, because we stated a bunch of low numbers, has a actual velocity of 18. He's a really slow pitcher. He's a contact type of guy. That just is the type of player that he is. So going back to these velocity, control, and break numbers, let's talk about what each one of those actually means. So a pitcher's velocity number is going to essentially be how fast they can pitch the ball. Whether a player can pitch 97 miles per hour, 98, or 99, you guys can see as I increase and decrease it, it's going to increase and decrease the miles per hour of that pitch. Control is relatively straightforward. It is, kind of linked with the formulas going on above, but control is going to determine how well you're able to control where your pitches go. A higher control number is going to mean that you're going to be more accurately able to place those pitches that you want to place, and a low control number is going to mean that they might break away from where you're trying to pitch them, or you might pitch it in a certain area and it just rises higher or lower or left or right from where you actually intended it to go. There are often times where you will, if let's say you're pitching on meter, for example, if you actually pitch the ball and hit the meter perfectly, the ball might still not go exactly where you placed it. And that is directly linked with your control number as well as the other things that I've already mentioned. And so let's say you had a pitcher with 2 control, but you perfectly hit the meter whenever you were going with your pitch. That pitch could still go wild in comparison to where you put it because they have a low control number on that pitch. And the final attribute slash rating here is break. A break number is essentially going to determine how well a pitch breaks, how well it changes direction. So on your, breaking pitches like a slider or a curveball and things like that, generally speaking, you want to have good break on those pitches because that is going to get that rotation, that's going to get that movement, and those are the things that often draw strikeouts. I will also go ahead and do a dedicated video to batting and fielding. We will group those together since they are grouped together here on MLB. But what I do want to say is, from a pitcher's perspective, there are a couple of attributes that actually really matter in terms of what's going on with your pitcher. Number one would be durability. Obviously, their durability is going to essentially account for how often or how not often they get injured. They are then going to want to look at arm strength, arm accuracy, reaction, and fielding. So whenever you're on the mound with a pitcher, a lot of times balls will be hit in your direction, considering you're essentially right in front of the batter. And so a fielding ability is going to determine how well, when the ball is actually hit to you, you're able to grab it. If you have a high fielding ability, you're going to make that catch. If you have a low fielding ability, sometimes you'll bobble it, or it'll fall out of your glove. It might be more difficult for you actually to make a play on that ball and throw it to whatever base you need to. From a reaction perspective, that one speaks for itself. It's how well you react to that ball hit to you. So if you have zero reaction, that ball might go right past you. If you have good reaction, then you might be able to make a little bit of a movement and snag a ball that would otherwise go past a different pitcher. So then we're going to talk about arm accuracy and arm strength. Arm strength is going to determine how strong your arm is and how quickly you can throw the ball to whatever base you're trying to throw it to. And arm accuracy is how accurate you are whenever you're doing those things. Very often, these are things that come into play with pitchers because, like I said, you'll get balls hit in your direction and you're going to need to make a throw a lot of times to first base or something like that. Or maybe you want to try to turn a double play by throwing to second. It will happen. And so these are ratings that you need to know for your pitchers as well. So that's everything that you guys need to know in terms of attributes slash ratings for pitchers in MLB The Show 21 or MLB The Show in general. I wanted to get this video out before I specifically talk about this position group and which ratings are most important for this position group, because you need to have an understanding of what these ratings are in order to understand why certain ratings matter for a starting pitcher, a relief pitcher, and a closing pitcher. So stay tuned for those videos. With all that being said, make sure you guys leave feedback on the video. Let me know how the audio is. I'll be listening back to this video as well in comparison to what my audio normally is. Like I said, making a change in terms of my microphone, but leave all that feedback down in the comment section as well. Leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you're new. I'll see you guys in the next video, and I hope you guys have a